Have you ever heard the story of the plane that vanished into thin air, only to reappear 37 years later, as if no time had passed at all? This isn't a movie plot. It's the bizarre tale of Pan Am Flight 914, a story that has captivated and confused people for decades. So, grab your boarding pass, because we're about to fly into one of the most mysterious aviation incidents ever reported. Our story begins on a seemingly ordinary day. Huli 2 1955 at a bustling New York City airport. Pan American Flight 914, a Douglas DC for aircraft, was preparing for its journey to Miami, Florida. On board were 57 passengers and 4 crew members, all looking forward to sunshine and palm trees. The plane took off without a hitch, soaring into the clear blue sky. But somewhere over the Atlantic Ocean, something inexplicable happened. Flight 914 simply vanished from radar screens. Air traffic controllers frantically tried to make contact, but their calls were met with deafening silence. An enormous search and rescue operation was launched immediately. The U.S. military and Coast Guard scoured thousands of square miles of ocean, hoping to find any trace of the aircraft wreckage, an oil slick, anything. But they found nothing. It was a Sifta 100-ton plane, and everyone on board had been erased from existence. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. With no evidence and no leads, authorities were forced to make a grim conclusion. Flight 914 had crashed, and all 61 souls were lost at sea. It was a tragic accident, another sad chapter in the annals of aviation history. Or so everyone thought. Now, let's fast forward 37 years. The date is September 9th, 1992. The place is Caracas, Venezuela. Air traffic controllers at the international airport are going about their day when a strange blip suddenly appears on their radar, seemingly out of nowhere. It's an aircraft, but it's not on any of their scheduled arrivals. They try to establish communication. The pilot radios in, his voice filled with confusion. "We are Pan American Airways. Flight 914, from New York to Miami, with a crew of 4 and 57 passengers. The control tower is stunned into silence. Pan American Airways, they went out of business years ago." And Flight 914, that name rings a faint, distant bell from a long-forgotten tragedy. The controller, a man named Juan de la Corte, cautiously asks the pilot for more information. He asks if they are in some kind of trouble, if they've been diverted. The pilot's reply is even more baffling. He states his scheduled landing time in Miami was 9:55 a.m. on July 2nd, 1955. On the ground in Caracas, chaos begins to unfold. The controllers look at the aircraft through their binoculars. It's an old propeller plane, a Douglas DC-4 model that hadn't been used for commercial flights in decades. It looked like a museum piece that had somehow taken to the skies. They had no choice but to clear a runway for an emergency landing. As the vintage plane made its final approach, ground crews were speechless. It was like watching a ghost descend from the clouds. The landing was smooth, but the mystery was just beginning. As the plane taxied on the runway, the pilot looked out his window at the modern jets and the bustling airport. You can only imagine his shock. It was heard over the radio saying, "Something is not right here." Juan de la Corte tried to calm him down, explaining that it was the year 1992. A ground crew approached the aircraft, but the pilot waved them off frantically. Through the radio, he was heard shouting, "No, stay back, we're leaving now." And then, the unbelievable happened again. The engines of the old DC-4 roared back to life. Without clearance from the tower, the pilot turned the plane around, sped down the runway, and took off back into the sky. It climbed steeply and, within minutes, vanished into the clouds, just as mysteriously as it had appeared. Military jets were scrambled to pursue it, but they found nothing. The sky was empty. Flight 914 was gone. Once more. What did they leave behind? According to the story, just one small piece of evidence. A pocket calendar from the year 1955, supposedly dropped from the plane as it took off. And what about the people, the passengers and crew? Their voices were never heard again. It's said that after the incident, the authorities in Caracas managed to get the passenger and crew manifests from the 1955 flight. And here is the creepiest part. It is claimed that all 61 individuals on that list were still accounted for as missing and presumed dead. Their families had long since moved on, accepting their loss. Yet for a few brief moments in 1992, they were seemingly alive and well, trapped in a time capsule, before disappearing forever. This story is incredible, right? It has all the elements of a perfect paranormal mystery: a time slip, a ghost plane, bewildered witnesses, and a single, tantalizing piece of physical evidence. It's a story that has been shared countless times on the internet, in articles, and in videos just like this one. It has the kind of tale that makes you wonder about the strange and unexplained corners of our world. But now, it's time for us to land back in reality. Is the story of Pan Am Flight 914 true? The short answer is no. The entire narrative, as compelling as it is, originates from a work of fiction. The story was first published in 1985 in a tabloid newspaper called the Weekly World News. This was a publication famous for its fantastical and completely fabricated stories, with headlines like "Bat Boy found in cave," an alien Bible found. They were the masters of sensational fiction. And the story of Flight 914 was one of their greatest hits. They didn't just publish it once, they brought it back in the 1990s, changing the dates to make the story seem current. For example, they changed the reappearance date to 1992 to fit the new timeline. They even created fake photos, including a picture of the so-called air traffic controller, Juan de la Corte, who was actually just a stock photo model. The image of the Douglas DC-4 aircraft used in the articles is also a stock photo of a completely different plane. So, how did this fictional story become so widely believed? The power of the internet. In the early days of the web, stories could spread like wildfire without any fact-checking. People would copy and paste the article, share it in forums, and eventually, it morphed from a tabloid fantasy into an unexplained mystery. The details were so specific, the narrative so compelling, that people wanted to believe it. The idea of a plane traveling through time is just too fascinating to dismiss easily. The legend was further amplified by YouTube channels and websites dedicated to mysteries, many of which presented the story as fact, or at least as a genuine, unsolved case. Each new video or article added another layer to the myth, repeating the fictional details until they felt real. The name Pan Am, a real but now defunct airline, added a touch of authenticity. The specific flight number, the dates, the passenger count, all created a very convincing package. In reality, there is no record of a Pan Am Flight 914 ever disappearing in 1955. Aviation authorities have no files on it. Newspaper archives from July 1955 show no reports of a missing plane with 61 people on board. Such an event would have been major international news, but there's complete silence. The entire story was crafted from imagination. So, while we may not have uncovered a real-life time-traveling airplane, we have uncovered something just as interesting: the anatomy of a modern myth. The story of Flight 914 shows us how easily fiction can be mistaken for fact in the digital age, and how a good story can take on a life of its own, traveling through the internet for decades, much like the ghost plane itself. It's a powerful reminder to always be curious, but also to be critical and to check our sources. The truth is often less spectacular than the fiction, but it's the truth nonetheless. What do you think? Did you ever hear this story and believe it was real? Let me know in the comments below. It's a fascinating example of storytelling. Thanks for joining me on this journey into one of aviation's greatest hoaxes. If you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more mysteries, both real and imagined. See you next time.